Projects are the heart of how things get done in an organization, and yet they are almost always fraught with challenges. This next section challenges more traditional approaches to projects and encourages you to bite off a little less, not more, when it comes to improving your project outcomes. Let's take a look. Recent changes to how to manage projects, especially complex ones, have emerged primarily from the tech and manufacturing industries. Along with that has been an explosion in terminology and approaches, many of which are hard to distinguish and can seem to blur together. You may have heard terms like agile or lean in such contexts, in parallel with the rejection of things like the waterfall approach. Honestly, disentangling all this isn't really useful for you at this point. Recall the earlier value of making data informed decisions? The best possible approach there is small, iterative projects that demonstrate tangible results. What you want to focus on is a well defined problem statement that you can evaluate with data and properly size a team that is focused on solving that problem. Try to keep that team as small as possible. And to make this more concrete, up next we've got an exercise to help you think through who should be on that team and in what capacity. Now, for this exercise, you're going to create what's called a Raki chart, which is a listing of the roles and responsibilities outlining the activities and jobs to be done for a project or process. Before you pull out your trusty piece of paper, let's take a closer look at what each of these means, okay? The responsibilities role is the person who directly performs the work. Think of them as the doer. The accountable person is required or expected to justify actions or decisions. The buck stops with them. The consultant role must be included when making decisions or completing a task. These are people you keep in the loop. And lastly, there's anyone who should be informed when a decision is made or a task is completed. You're keeping them in the picture. It's helpful to realize that a role is not a specific person. It's just simply a hat that a person wears, as in, I'm wearing many hats on this project. The same person might, for example, fill two roles on a data analysis project, say analyst and also report writer. In our first course, An Introduction to Data Analysis, we laid out a framework for data projects. Now, if you haven't watched that video, it's okay. This should still generally make sense, but we definitely recommend you check that out at some point. Now, to help map roles to your project, you're going to use this framework, but it's helpful for us to frame it in slightly a different format. So let's do that next. To build this chart, we're first going to drop all the project framework pieces here on the left. And then along the top, we'll write out all of the various people involved in the project. This might be different for your work, but we'll put some pretty typical examples in here for you to get started. You can probably see that you're creating a matrix of sort, right? Which with rows and columns, so let's make it look like that. So this is where you start putting in roles for each square. At the intersection of each stage of the project and person, are they responsible, accountable, consulted, or informed? You write the corresponding letter in that square and move on to the next, like this. Go ahead and pause the video. Write this out on your own piece of paper for a possible project in your office, and come see me when you're done. Okay, awesome job. So now we have to come clean about something. This exercise was a bit of a setup. Did you realize after you got started trying to fill in all those squares that you can't possibly decide all of those roles on your own? If so, congratulations, you got a perfect score on this one. Earlier, we mentioned that data is a team sport, and this is especially the case when you're thinking about a project and who will be involved. The real value of Raki charts is providing a framework for having the discussion about what skills are needed, the roles. Who should be involved in the data analysis project, which specific people, and what each person should be doing on that project, their responsibilities. Think of it as a guide to help organize the team's work on a project. Once you've done all that, you'll likely end up with a version that looks something like this. There's a few noteworthy things about this Rocky chart, starting with the fact that some squares are blank. Now, when you think about who needs to be involved and when, certain people might not have a role at a particular stage of the project, like a designer who will help with the final report but doesn't really need to be involved in the analyst's background research. Two other important things are going on here, too. See if you can figure out what they are. Now, here's a hint. Look for how many roles are present in each row. The first one is that there's only ever one A in any row. Only one person should have that authoritative, accountable role. And the second one is that multiple people can have the same role, like the analyst and subject matter expert, who are both the responsible doers for this project at nearly every stage. We've covered a lot of ground in this course. Now, in this last section, you saw a number of possible team structures and hopefully began to get a sense of how they can impact projects in your daily work. You've also got a new tool in your toolbox, the Rocky chart, which should spark some informative and constructive conversations with your team members and colleagues. Hopefully, by now, you have a better understanding of the importance and influence of culture, values, and team dynamics and structure in your work. And ideally, you might already have a project in mind where you can put some of these concepts and techniques, like the Rocky chart, to use. Also, be sure to check out the next course in this series, which is on data communication and visualization. It's sure to be awesome.